And so that is my overall goal with the Ink and Icons podcast. I want to create people that will go back and clean up their
You're going to get killed, and I'm going to get raped, and all your kids are going to get sold to the slave market.
You ended up having a kid with him.
Yes.
And then he ended up passing away. Up a little. Yeah, now open your mouth. Like, we look like the kind of parents that are going to be like smoking crack and
Whoa.
and like, just because you suck compared to somebody else doesn't mean that wasn't your best too. Is there a word for that? I don't know. It like, I used to suckinitis or something.
Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Except heroin. Exactly.
Wait, have you not peed in a cup?
So let's hear the story you've been waiting to tell us.
Okay, I have been waiting to tell the story for quite a while. And I feel like it ties in perfectly because I was trying to think of like an overall goal of what I want people to get from the podcast. And I feel like if we can inspire more people to clean up their piss, then this podcast will be successful.
Yeah. Their piss?
Yeah, clean up their piss.
What
okay, so anyway, on our anniversary, it was our 13-year anniversary.
Oh, this was recent.
Yeah, no, Kelly hasn't heard this story, so she's here for the first time now. So anyways, we go to this place where we're getting massaged at. Kelly had already gone there, and so she was getting massaged before me. I get there and I had to pee super bad, right? And so I come in the door. I come in the door and I like run up and I had like my coffee cup in my hand, right? And I run up to the door.
Shouldn't you be telling
And I
this
get
story?
up to the door and
I know where
like
this is
the
going
door is
now.
locked. And I was like, oh, the door's locked, so I can't go in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But there's multiple floors. And I'm
Don't
like,
move.
okay, I'm going to go run through the other floors and see if I can maybe find a bathroom. So I run through both other floors, make it to the very top of the building. All the fucking bathrooms are locked in the whole place. And I'm like, fucking, I'm looking around and I like look at my coffee cup and I'm like, shit. Okay, maybe I can just go find a spot where I can piss in the cup in the building, maybe in the stairwell. And so I walk into the stairwell. And I take my coffee cup and I'm kind of standing by this tree in the stairwell and I kind of like whip it out and I pee in the coffee cup, right? And I'm like, oh, this is so relieving. I finally get done and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with my cup of piss? And so I'm like, okay. And so I take and I put the lid on it and I walk down and I'm like looking around and I go down and there was actually like this, I go down to the bottom of the building and like the bottom of the stairway.
Yeah.
And there was like a little area that I could go to set it down. And I'm like, okay, I'll just set it down right here. And then like, I'll come back and like grab it and dispose of it later. And so I grab my cup of piss and I like go to set it down. Well, the fucking like, it heating and reheating made it so the lid was wrong, and I like go to set it down and the lid pops off and it fucking hits and like piss splashes all over the wall and it like goes down the stairs and shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I got piss all over me and I don't know what to do. And I'm like awkwardly standing in the hallway and I don't want to get caught, right? Like I don't want to get caught with like piss everywhere. So I like run up the stairs.
He just runs away.
And I run up and I go like, and there's a little waiting area and I just pretty much have it on my hands. And so I kind of like sit there and I have my hands out and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go wash my hands. Like when she finally comes out, it's got to be like getting time for her to be done with her massage. So she comes out of the door and I look at the girl named Heather that's giving her the massage and I'm like, hey, do you have the key to the bathroom so I can use the bathroom? And she's like, yeah. And so I go in, wash my hands, and then I end up getting massaged. Well, when I get done getting massaged, this massage was so amazing. I totally forgot about the whole piss incident before it, right? And so I leave and I'm like super happy. And then we take off and we ended up going to do a float pod. So like we float in our little sensory deprivation tank. Well, when I'm laying in the sensory deprivation tank, I'm like, fuck, I forgot to clean up the piss. I'm like, oh man. And like, I felt bad about it because I know some janitor is going to come along and then they're going to be like, what the fuck is this coffee? And then they're going to be like, oh my God, it smells like piss. And they'll be like, someone pissed in a cup and threw it all down the fucking stairs. Like, this is ridiculous. And so I'm like thinking about it as I'm laying in the float pod. And I was like, all right, I totally like, I have to go back and clean it up. Like I will go back and clean it up. So we get out of the float pod. Kelly's like, hey, how was your float? I'm like, oh, it was great. And we're supposed to go out and eat sushi, right? Yeah. And so I'm like, hey, I spilt my coffee cup and I need to go clean it up. And she's like, you did what? I'm like, yeah, I was in the stairwell and I spilt my coffee cup and I need to go clean it up. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So we go to Walgreens And I get some paper towel and I get some like spray cleaner that's like disinfectant too to like clean it all up. And she gets a hold of Heather, the masseuse, and gives us the code so we can get in the building. And I go back there at like 8:30 at night and go in. And by this point in time, like it was pretty bad. Like the way the cup had spilled, like the piss actually like dribbled all the way down the whole flight of stairs.
Oh my God.
And so I had to sit there, but I had a garbage bag and I had the like whole roll of paper towels. So I like spray it and I cleaned it all up and it was like really great. Grab it, took it, threw the whole like everything away, and then we ended up going out and we ate dinner afterwards.
He never said anything about it being piss. And so I think he's making this huge deal about coffee. And Heather's like, don't worry about it. We have janitors that come in and professionally clean it every night. And he's like, no, I have to go back and clean it. And so I'm like, okay, bro, whatever. And I get him back into the building. He never says a word about it.
Yeah, she's like, so how'd it go? I'm like, it went good. It went really good. I got it all cleaned up.
Oh my God.
I was like, it's a really funny story. I'll tell you about it at the podcast, but I'm not going into it right now. So anyways, yeah, that's my story.
Beautiful.
And,
I'm glad you got that off
thank
your
you
chest.
for like letting me go back and cleaning it up. And
Did you just wait in the car?
she just waited in the car. I was like, well, I told her, I'm like, no, I got this.
You're like, stay.
Well, because I almost
go
was
take
going
care
to
of it on my
go
own.
help him
Yeah, you're
just
like,
to
"Get outta
expedite
here."
things. But then
That would have been
I'm
really funny.
glad
it's
I
pretty good.
didn't.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I would be glad I didn't.
So
Right.
they say that like pacifying is something like in psychology, right? Like
Yeah.
if someone's doing something embarrassing, they'll like touch their face. I have a feeling I totally just touched my face
did.
like
You did do it a couple
30 times during that story. It was super embarrassing, but like I feel like it's a good story for people to hear.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, so this is the Ink and Icons podcast. This is the first official episode. We have Mariah and Kelly, and I'm Jake, and we're going to be the hosts of the Ink and Icons podcast. Kelly and I are both tattoo artists, and Mariah is our business manager, and so we're coming together so we can share stories from really inspiring people. The other podcasts, we're going to have people on that are actually people that we see as being icons in some way, and the people that we're looking for, I would say, are like rebel icons,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah, and so they're the kind of people who I would say go against the grain of society just a little bit. They might ruffle some feathers along the way, but they still do really, really amazing things. And so we're really excited to share their stories. But today is all about just introducing us and going over our different stories. Like both you and Kelly have been through a lot, and then you guys are both super, super amazing people. And so I think having a little bit of your story shared with people is going to end up being something that is really inspiring overall.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And so we have the first things that we're going to start going over is the introduction, right? Like the introduction of kind of everybody and running through who the person is. And we kind of already ran over our stories. So it might be fun kind of going through it and like the two people that aren't the person can actually like talk about the person and we'll see
that's
like how
cool.
much we remembered of that person. Okay.
Ooh, I like it.
That is a good
So who
idea.
wants to be the person first?
I'll be the person first.
Okay, so Mariah is the person. So going into Mariah's story. So when Mariah was a little kid, she ended up starting to work for her parents at like 2 years old.
No,
And
second grade.
It was slave
Second
labor.
grade.
There was a two.
Yeah, good job on the two, but it was like second grade.
It was-
Maybe two. I don't remember.
Okay, so I might have been a
It
little
could
bit
have
off, but
been.
she did start working for her parents at a super, super young age. I think that was the first thing on our list, right? Was that the
Yes.
first thing on Mariah's like
Yeah.
overall list of her life?
She's been around, like surrounded by family, like all the time,
Yeah,
her whole life.
totally.
Yeah, good job, Carl.
And so after she started working for her parents, what did she do, baby?
After she started working for her parents, she did that until just before she started working for us.
Yeah, true.
But she was going to be a teacher, and so she worked in Havre at a school for a while, and then decided that was not her bag.
And she played basketball. Like she ended up actually joining the basketball team.
That's jumping around a little bit.
Well, I feel like you skipped the basketball part. So she did play basketball in school, and that was a super cool part of her story because she ended up joining the basketball team and then to get to play. She sat on the bench and like went in early for practice, and she was the manager, and she was supposed to get to play if someone else didn't play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tried out as a freshman, and I got, like, they moved me up to JV and varsity to have me practice for tryouts. And so I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to at least be on the freshman team. And then they pulled me in and they're like, we're cutting you. I was like, oh, I was so upset. But it was a good experience, I guess.
So after that, then you ended up, when did you meet your first husband?
I met Wes when we were in high school.
Okay.
Did you guys actually get married?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boyfriend.
But we were
So it was
always really
boyfriend.
good friends in high school. Yeah.
Okay. And then you ended up having a kid with him.
Yes.
And then he ended up passing away. He
Yes.
died, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that overall is something that makes you a really unique person. Like so many people go through stuff like that and then they come out the other side and they are very bitter and they have a really bitter outlook on life. And then you didn't end up having that. Like I feel like the outlook that you ended up taking was one that was like so much more grateful. Like you ended up, I feel like you came out the other side and you were actually like more grateful for everything and more appreciative of everything in life, which makes you super awesome to be around. Like when things go wrong or when something happens, like Mariah is totally the kind of person that doesn't let the little things get to her. And that's super cool.
Thanks.
Definitely. Well, and then realizing kind of just the whole scale of everything and realizing that the majority of things that people view as being problems aren't real at all.
Right. Well, and there's always like a positive spin you can put on it too.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do such a good job dealing with things. So I would say that's a really key thing in your life, that like the people out there knowing that you went through that, I think is one of the really pivotal things overall. And then you ended up getting, you had your first son from your boyfriend in that relationship. And then you ended up kind of being in a different relationship that wasn't a good relationship, right?
Yeah.
And then after you got out of that relationship, then you met a different guy and then you had another kid.
Yes.
So you have two kids now,
cute.
little boy, little girl. What ages?
6 and 1.5.
6 and 1.5. So she's a mom of a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old.
Yeah, they're evil. Well, they're cute and cuddly, so.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that saves them at this point.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
The best defense mechanism.
I remember like one of the funniest stories ever. I ran into this dude at the gym and he was the father of like 3 very young kids.
Yeah.
And he looked so run down and so beaten. And I'm like, I see him in the locker room and I was like, how's it going, man? He's like, man, these kids, like I have one that's like 4 months old, one that's like just over a year old, and then he had one that was just a little bit older, like a year and a half older. So all of them were like
Super
almost,
close.
is it Irish twins when they're like super close?
That's like
together?
Irish triplets.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had like Irish triplets basically. And I'm like, oh man, you got to remember though, like that point in time is so magical and it's so amazing and they're so great. And then like you look back on it and you're like, wow, I just didn't enjoy him and I didn't appreciate him as much as I should have. And I look at him and I'm like telling him this, right?
Yeah.
Like thinking that like I'm wise because I've already gone through that.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me and he's like, really? Is it really like that? Or is it just the fact that like you don't remember it because it was so horrible and like you block it out. You block out all the horrible
It's
things.
so funny.
And I was like, you might actually be right. And then it like I start having these flashbacks of what it was actually like and all the screaming and like crying and craziness. And I was
sleeping.
like, yeah, it definitely was gnarlier than I thought it was. And so, but it is great. Like when you look back on it and you block all that shit out of your mind.
Well, and you never remember the bad shit anyway. I don't feel like.
Yeah.
No, like people in general. Like
Totally.
maybe,
You block it
maybe
out.
me anyway. I don't know.
No, I feel like that's true.
Yeah.
That's like how they say don't remember childbirth. You block it out.
Exactly.
No one would do it again.
Nope.
You did.
Be like one and done.
Everybody does. They have a tendency to block out the bad things for sure.
Totally. But it is true. Like there's so much There's so many fun things that happen at each age, even if some of them are kind of horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I really feel like just being a parent of at least a couple kids really gives you a different perspective on life and on the world. So I think that's something that's like super important about you. And then we ended up hiring Mariah because she has amazing people skills. Like out of everyone I know, like we hired her to take care of our communications for Bertelsen Tattoo. And then, yeah. Totally killed it. Did so good that she like worked her way into other stuff and then ended up working her way into helping us do a bunch of stuff with Exex Art. And now you're here and you're actually a part of the podcast.
I'm here. I'm getting tattooed.
Yeah.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
Totally. Overall, like I think you have kind of a different perspective. You've also read a bunch of self-help books and gone through a whole bunch of stuff like that after you ended up losing your boyfriend, your baby's dad of your first child. And like I think the things that you've read end up making it so you have a different perspective than a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I remember because that was like really how we started hanging out more besides just getting tattooed is through book club. And Brixton was 4 months old at the time that Wes passed away. And I remember just feeling like this crazy guilt that like I got to like experience all these firsts with Brixton and he didn't get to see that at all. Yeah. And there was definitely a lot of like books and like talking that through with you guys too. And like being able to express the feelings I had and was like kind of working through was super helpful.
That's awesome. So we ended up having a book club at the tattoo shop because I wanted to make it so like our employees could learn a bunch of kind of the stuff that Kelly and I had learned over the years. And Mariah was getting tattooed at that time. We were working on this sleeve and she was like, I want to join book club. And so she was just a client that ended up coming in and then she sat in on book club, which in looking back on it, like for people that are out there and they want to, I don't know, do more. Like you got to take advantage of those opportunities. Like you literally, like, I don't even think you were invited. I think you were just like, myself. You invited yourself. You're like, hey, I want to come.
Like, that sounds great. Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you got to invite yourself. Sometimes you got to come. And then you have to make it so things happen. Like you got to be like, no, I want this. I like it. And you like, you saw a door that could potentially be opened and you like push through it and you're like, I'm going to be a part of this. And then you got so much out of it. And then now looking back on it, it's really cool because if you wouldn't have done that, like you probably wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And it's funny that you're like, my employees need to read these books. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you ended up being here. And I kind of did it so our employees would be able to be with us long term. And then like none of them made it, but you did. So that was really cool. All right. So Carlitos Bertelsen is our official cameraman, and he is pretty amazing. I will go ahead and let Kelly start off the beginning of Carlitos' story and background. So the viewers out there know who this wonderful young man that is shooting video is.
So Carlitos is my second oldest son. And he has always been just super sweet. There's been, you know, those kids that you have them and you have to teach them how to be nice. You have to teach them how to be honest, and you have to teach them how to be a good person. It's not
a lot of work.
Natural.
Right.
You didn't have to teach that to Carlitos. He just came out and he was super sweet and honest and awesome. So yeah. I don't know.
He was like this little ball of light. And like other kids, you have to teach them like, be kind to other people. Right. And like, you have to do a really good job teaching them that because they normally are like semi-selfish. Yeah. But for Carlitos, he was just not that way. He was just like this little ball of light. And I'm like, okay, dude, my job with you is to try and make it so like you maintain that through your childhood. I want you to come out the other side and still have that glowing ball of light feeling. And I failed horribly. No, not really. No, he's actually pretty great. He is a great kid for sure.
Something that I really feel like was a key point for his character development was after my second husband, Troy, passed away. It definitely hit Carlitos pretty hard. Yeah. And he was drawing some pictures in class that were kind of rough.
Like dicks?
Pretty dark. No, like dead. No, like dead
Big
people.
Veiny bastards.
He was drawing dead people.
I never knew you drew dead people.
Well, yeah. And that's what got him into the special class.
Oh yeah.
With,
Really? I thought he
Yeah.
beat up somebody. I didn't know he was drawing pictures of dead people.
It got him in. That was Robert. They internalize and heal differently.
Okay.
No, I was slightly emotionally unavailable. So having a team of people at the school that was dedicated to helping him figure out his stuff was amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's super crazy. And then the Carlitos ended up being a super awesome people person too. And so he was one of the most amazing, like when you see little kids interact with adults, a lot of the times it's really bad and like they don't know what they're doing. But he was the kind of kid that like every adult out there absolutely loved. And then he ended up spending a bunch of time with us and a bunch of time hanging around other people and got like really, really good hanging out with adults. And then it was kind of weird for him because then like we kind of jumped him around from school to school. And then when he ended up going and like actually being in a school, I remember him getting super upset because he like didn't know how to talk to people. And he was like, or kids his own age, not people. He's really good at talking to adults. He wasn't as good at like interacting with kids that were his own age. And I'm like, dude, if you're good at talking to adults, then you're good. Like, and he's like, no, but I want to be able to interact with the kids. And so but it didn't take him long. Like he had such good people skills. Then he was able to like adapt that. And then he ended up getting along with the kids at his school really well too. And so through Carlitos, well, he got to go to Costa Rica too, when he was like 11 years old. And so that was super cool. I remember him, like we took him down there because we wanted to move him out of the US so he could get to experience life somewhere else because they were kind of starting to turn into entitled little American kids. So we're like, we got to get him the fuck out of here.
I mean, that age sounds about right for like all kids, right?
Yeah, totally.
So we looked up the best tattoo shops in the country, and then we ended up moving the whole family down to Costa Rica. We didn't even speak Spanish, and we just went down there for like 6 months. So
that was the first time you'd ever gone to Costa Rica, right?
Yeah, we'd heard great things about it. So it wasn't like we picked a place that seemed like super hostile. It was supposed to be like one of the nicest places in the world. And then we just moved the whole family down there. We got tons of shit. Like that's just kind of like the American thing is like
everybody was so scared. Everybody's like, oh, you're gonna get killed and I'm gonna get raped and all your kids are gonna get sold to the slave market.
And that was like our parents saying that stuff to us. Yeah, they're like, Kelly's gonna get raped and the kids are gonna get sold into. I hear the sex trafficking down there is crazy. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I think there's so much fear like overall, but we knew it was going to be like a good thing for them, getting them out of the U.S. And so like deep down, we knew it was going to be a good thing for them. And it ended up being amazing. We got these books. That was when we first read The Big Leap. Oh, really? Was when we were down there. And then Carlitos he read it too. And then it was crazy because we had people that like the kids would talk to while we were down there. And they like literally would come up when they're getting ready to leave after their vacation. And they're like, we just brought you like all this food and all this candy and all these gifts. Like these kids changed our lives. Like the things that they were saying and the stuff that they were talking about made us rethink life itself. And like they gave us like a whole bunch of gifts and stuff. And they're like, these are the most amazing kids we've ever seen. And so it was super cool. Like that was so Carlitos at a young age. He wanted to be a tattoo artist and he gave me his first tattoo at the age of 8.
Yes, I remember seeing those pictures.
Yeah.
It's probably the best tattoo he has on him.
It is actually the greatest. It is the greatest tattoo that I have by far. And then he decided that he wanted to do photography and videography before he graduated high school. There was one of our clients, was it Nate Hill?
Nate, yeah.
Yeah, and he was this amazing videographer and photographer, and he made a really cool video for the tattoo shop, and he also was like full-time, videographer. He was actually a professional videographer at that point in time, and he inspired Carlitos to want to start doing it. And then a lot of the moves that we've made since then have been to make it so he could do photography and videography, and now he's freaking awesome.
Yeah, he's killing it.
Yeah, he's super good.
Yeah, no, thanks. Still super grateful that you guys did that. That's a hard thing to get into. So.
Yeah,
you're
definitely.
doing amazing. It's super crazy. He was talking about like, what is the term when you're looking at your old work and you see how much it's changed to now, and it was so crazy looking at just like last year.
Is there a word for that?
I don't know.
I don't know. It, like I used to fucking suckinitis or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to figure it out, but
Because that happens all the time,
Yeah,
looking
that's
back on
true.
it. But the key thing, I think, like when you do that, like as long as you're always doing your best, then when you look back on it and you're like, oh my God, that shit was so terrible, then like you know it was you at your best at that point in time. And
it's
so like, and I know
reassuring.
Carlitos tried super hard. Like I remember nights where he'd be up like all night long and he's like editing and like doing the best that he can. And so, yeah, like, I mean, even though looking back on it, you know, you would do a lot better. Like
Right.
he tried really hard and he put everything that he had into it. So, but yeah, I'd say that's Carlitos in a nutshell. Come back up here. Give a bow to the people out there.
that was.
Don't
Yeah, this is-
I just kind of have to do a little squat because I don't want to fuck anything up in here. But yeah.
Right on.
Good job.
So I feel like the next person that we should move into talking about should be Kelly.
Okay.
So she was born in Airway Heights and her dad was in the Air Force.
Air Force,
And
yes.
she actually doesn't remember her dad at all from
from that
her
point in
younger
time.
life. Yeah. She did get to know him a little bit after that, but like he was never really there. So she was pretty much raised by her single mom.
Yeah.
And she ended up growing up on a reservation that was, what was the reservation called?
It's just, it's Welpinit. It's the Spokane Indian Reservation.
Okay.
Yeah. It's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's super pretty.
Yeah, that's crazy. And did you go to school there?
No, there was like this little farm town about half an hour away called Reardon, and I would take the bus and go into school in there because it was safer, seeing as how I was pretty white for being
Yeah.
out on the res.
And you would have got your ass
I would have
beat
gotten my
if
ass
you went to
beat,
the res
so-
school.
Well, that's what my mom and my grandma thought because
Yeah.
they got their asses beat when they
dang.
went to school out on the res.
When they went to school out there.
That's nice that they're
Yeah.
like considering you then.
Totally. But yeah, it was a really, really interesting time. It's super crazy too because when I go back out there, and I haven't went back out there for a hot minute, but it's the same. Like it's like time
Yeah.
stops.
It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so odd.
Yeah, no, that would like I feel like that in itself is a pretty character shaping thing.
Yeah.
Like growing up on a reservation and then like being super white and like not fitting in.
Yeah.
And low
On
income
the-
housing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in low income housing. And then you move from there. So you move from there to it's called Felony Flats, right? Is the nickname for it in
Yeah, it's pretty much the
Spokane?
west side of Spokane above Doomsday Hill. And it was really crazy. So seeing as how my mom was single and she was a hairstylist, she was working, full time, but didn't make a whole lot of money. So that's pretty much where she could afford to get into.
Yeah.
And it was a super sketch part of town.
She ended up hanging out with a bunch of kids that were like totally from the wrong side of the tracks and ended up getting into a whole bunch of crap. And then she hung out with kind of everybody. But then the people that you hung out with the most were like Mexican gangsters, right? Which is where you ended up meeting Carlitos' dad,
For sure.
right?
Definitely.
Yep.
And then you got knocked up when you were 16 years old,
Yep. Got knocked up at 16.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
dropped out of school.
Dropped out of school, got my GED. And, well, actually, so
Had your first kid at 17.
had my first kid at 17 and was married at 17.
Yep.
And then I got pregnant with Carlitos when I was 18.
Then your husband died.
Yeah. I'd been kind of chasing him around trying to serve him divorce papers for quite a while. But he was kind of like bouncing from one crack house to another. And so it was kind of hard to track him down. But yeah, he ended up working on some stolen motorcycles and jet skis, and he was using the generator for a heater, and he asphyxiated. He just ended up going to sleep and not waking up. Totally. So, yeah.
And then she ended up meeting another guy. Okay, you can take it from here. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember a story from here?
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay, so then you ended up meeting another guy.
You gotta point the microphone at your mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, so Robert, when he was living with me, he had collected like all these cars that he wanted to have like a car club. And so I had this old ass like 1950 Cadillac.
Okay.
And I had this guy just randomly wander into my yard and want to buy it from me. And that was Troy. He ended up being very charming, very sweet. He was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And he was a mechanic. So he ended up taking the Cadillac and I went with it.
And you guys moved to Montana at that point, right?
No, there was, my memory gets a little blurry when it comes to this point just because I did a lot of moving around at that time. And the kids were super tiny. They were like 2 and 3. And then we moved to Montana. And then when the boys, I just remember Titus being like 18 months old.
Okay.
And then we ended up going out camping on Ashley Lake. And Troy jumped on this 4-wheeler and ended up crashing into a tree. And so he passed away.
Okay, so Troy passes away and you guys were all like camping. So you were all out there when that happened, right?
Yeah, it was... Robert and Carlitos and Titus were all sleeping. And so we had to wake them up and I had to go into the hospital. And,
oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That is crazy.
So then after that, you ended up meeting, well, you ended up dating a guy that you knew kind of like from that time. And then he passed away too, right?
Yes. Like
And
pretty quickly thereafter. Well, I was with him for about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And then, he ended up going to a bachelor party up in Eureka, and then he flipped his truck.
Man.
Yeah. So the past 3 dudes before me are all toast. And it's crazy looking back on it because like I really think like at the moment in time that Kelly and I met, I literally like was just so comfortable with dying that I was doing all kinds of crazy shit where it was like I was actually like on the verge of probably like towing the line so much that I probably would have died soon after that. But then when I ended up like dating her, then because she had gone through so much, then I quit doing a bunch of the stupid shit that I was doing. And I feel like there was like, in looking back on it, I think she was just like attracted to people who were like pushing the limits. Like, I think there's a different sort of, you carry yourself differently when you genuinely don't care if you live or die.
Yeah.
So after that, you ended up becoming, she had been a stay-at-home mom pretty much the whole time. She did work in a mechanic shop a little bit with Troy. So she's done some mechanic stuff and like actually wrenched on vehicles before. And then...
Thank you.
Yeah, where were you at after that? Like, where were you living?
After that, I moved to Missouri and then I came back here.
Okay.
And moved to Happy Valley. Cute little old 100-year-old house there.
Fun.
Yeah, it was super cute.
And then
it was just me and the boys. And then I ended up meeting Jake out at the bar.
And then a bunch of stuff happened that I feel like is way too much to go into. But then she started tattooing. We can talk about that in later podcasts.
Yeah.
The long ass like us meeting and all the cool stuff. I held a hummingbird in my hand. That was a cool story that we'll have to tell at some point in time.
Side note.
Yeah. But then we dated. She proposed to me. Then we started tattooing. I got laid off my construction job.
Right.
And that was a super cool point. Okay, so I got laid off my construction job.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what I was going to do because we were living like paycheck to paycheck, right?
And that's when you guys were in the RV, right?
No, that was before the RV.
Oh, okay.
And so this was like, we actually had a house, we had a truck, like everything was going good. I was doing construction. She had just gotten pregnant with my daughter, Mariah.
Right.
And so then I got laid off of my job. And I come home and I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I come.
Well, and you don't know me very well either. We're newlyweds.
Yeah,
but
I've only known her
Yeah.
for like less than a year.
That's so crazy.
Because we met, started dating, and then got married within 3 months. And so it was super fast. And then she got pregnant, like right
Yeah.
after that. And so like in the first year, there was so much that happened. But then I come home and I'm like, shit, I just got laid off. Like, we're going to lose our house. We're going to lose our truck. Like, this is a big deal. And I come back home and I walk in and I'm like, baby, I lost my job. And she's like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I think we're going to have to like move out of our house. Like, we're going to have to get rid of our truck. We might be able to get like a camper or something and park it out at my parents' place. And she's just like, okay.
Just like so cool about it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I look at her and I'm like, what? Okay. And she's just like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. And she's like, no. I never really liked this place anyways. Let's do it. And like, so I was just like, whoa, it was like the coolest thing ever. And I mean, like, she's pregnant, right? And she's going to be moving into a camper. And so we did. We moved into this 26-foot camper trailer. And then I started tattooing myself with a headlamp in my mom's basement. And then both of us ended up starting to tattoo shortly after that. And then we've been tattooing for the last 13 years now.
I'm pretty wild.
Well, and I think just like what we mentioned, like the things that seem really heavy and like inconvenient to a lot of people, you've kind of just experienced so much that you're like, that's not that big of a deal. We'll figure it out.
Exactly.
I think that's something that makes both you guys like super awesome is like Kelly's been through that 3 times, right? And then you've been through it once where you lost the person that you're with. And so like having you guys go through that stuff and like seeing the perspective, like for me, I haven't gone through that.
Yeah.
And so like I can sympathize, but I can't empathize with it. But then seeing the way that she acts because of it, it's just like amazing. Totally. And other people go the total opposite direction. Yeah. And so I think that's what's so cool about both of you is like you've actually been through a lot, but then you chose to make the most out of it. And you chose to like better your life because of it. Definitely. Instead of being like, oh, poor me, I've been through this. And like out of everybody that I feel like has a right to be like the world wronged me. Yeah. Both of you guys are like those people. And then both you chose not to do that.
Totally. And I think that's like the easier route to take is to be bitter and to be like angry because everyone expects you to be. And you kind of have, when that kind of thing happens, everyone looks at you and is like, oh my gosh. And like, you feel that like kind of weird bubble that you get put in. Like the pity bubble? Yeah, the pity bubble. It's really tough because it doesn't do anything and it just like makes you feel weird. I don't think there's like a really great way. Like I don't think people are taught how to approach someone that's grieving. No. So they build a pity out there for that. For them. Yeah. It isn't helpful. And I think that's why it was like such great timing to meet you guys and like get to come in with the book club and just like get to bounce my feelings off of you guys and like read those books. Yeah. And it made me like better at articulating what I was experiencing.
Well, and for me, I feel like it may have been different if I didn't have kids. Yeah. I could have maybe went down that pity party road. I think I did go down the pity party road. Yeah. Pretty heavy. For a little while. Yeah. But then you realize like, okay, left up to my own devices, I'm not good for myself. And I have people who I still need to be around here for. Yeah. And so that was totally like where I had to be unselfish. Yeah, be present. For me, it would have been very selfish to just like throw myself into like how I felt and how horrible all of my feelings were. And it's crazy. Like the impact that like both you guys have on me is insane. Like getting to watch you guys deal with things and deal with like stressful situations is super fucking inspiring. And so that's like what I think the people out there
are going to end up getting from like both of you guys talking about stuff is if someone comes on and they're like, oh yeah, I have like this thing that I'm going through, and like they know you, they're going to be like, that's kind of bullshit. Like these guys have actually been through a hell of a lot more, and like they're still pretty awesome. And so that in itself is like super inspiring. And I know there's like different stages to everything too, and like different things that you go through, but just the fact that you guys have both been through so much and then came out and you have the outlook that you do, I think is super inspiring. And I think people out there are going to get a bunch from that.
I hope so.
Gang.
Yeah, gang.
So, Jake was born in Great Falls, Montana, to Peggy and Troy Bertelsen. Let's talk about your work ethic and how you gained that by working on your grandma's farm.
I think you want to hold it more like this.
Can you do that again?
You want to like, no, point it right in the middle.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
Now go up a little. Yeah, now open your mouth like a little bit.
How? Oh, okay. Nice. Is that better?
Much better.
Did you get that?
My work ethic, huh? You think I
Yeah.
have a good work ethic?
It's all right.
What
Yeah,
makes,
I mean,
what makes you think I have a good work ethic?
I remember this one time that like your adrenal glands were shot because you were working like so much and not sleeping at all. I was like, that man is crazy.
Actually almost died. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's not a good example.
But I think that's actually a pretty good one because I did. But it's kind of funny because I feel like so many people, they talk about working really, really hard, and then they're not actually going hard. Like if you're not working so hard that like your adrenal glands shut down and your body stops absorbing the nutrients, like you weren't going very hard.
Well, I feel like people talk about working hard like I work hard 9 to 5 during the week, and then
Right.
Yeah,
Go
I was
home.
working like 100-hour work weeks continuously.
Yeah.
So on the farm when I was little, I
Yeah,
worked on my
let's go into
grandparents'
that.
farm. I think that's where you're going with that, right?
Yeah. And your grandparents owned like a 10,000 acre farm.
Oh wow.
In Great Falls. And they produced wheat. And so Jake would work summers there
Right.
and harvest.
It's all Greyland. You want to get a shot at the Greylands? So I would work on the farm every summer from the time that I was in 5th grade until I graduated from high school. And I got to drive tandem dump trucks.
That's so hard for you to say every time.
Tandem drum trucks. I got to drive tandem dump trucks.
It's closer.
I think that's the best I'm gonna get.
Okay. Keep rolling.
And I drove combines, and it was definitely, I was super young. Like I was driving those when I was 10 years old.
Damn.
And so I would drive them like down the middle of the road, and I'd be going along. And my grandparents told me like, if a car's coming, like you can just stop and they'll go around you.
Yeah.
And so that was how I would pass vehicles on this old dirt road.
Yeah.
I'm in this big old dump truck and I'm going down the road and I'm like cruising along, and then there's a car coming and I just like slow down and stop, and I'd pretty much be in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And they look all pissed, and then they get up to me and I'm like some tiny little kid hanging out the window, and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I definitely feel like that contributes to Jake's awesome obsessive work ethic.
And then when I started tattooing, it was like a whole different thing because I absolutely loved it. So I feel like you can work really, really hard too, like when you're doing what you love. And when you're doing something that sucks, then it's harder to put as much into it.
Well, and
That's
you've
true.
always been into art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've pretty much drawn your whole life.
I used to get in trouble for drawing in school, and I'd be like in English class, and my teachers would get so pissed because I just draw constantly, and they're like, you need to pay attention. Like art, like drawing is like, you don't need to do
waste of
that.
time.
It's such a waste of time.
You're never going to make any money.
Yeah.
Doing that.
That's not a job.
Right.
When I was in
Except
high
for
school.
one of your teachers.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I did.
Shout out that teacher.
I did have a teacher that was absolutely incredible named Lonnie Collins,worth. And it was cool because, okay, so he ended up doing something that was very pivotal in my life. And he gave me a really shitty grade. And his really shitty grade like changed my life. And I did this drawing, and I was busy, and I wanted to go hang out with my friends the night before, so I kind of rushed through the drawing, and I got it to the point where I'm like, that's good enough. And then I turned it in, right? And so I turned in this drawing, and I looked at it, and it was pretty good. But like for me, it wasn't my best.
Yeah.
But it was better than everybody else's. And so I'm like, yeah, that's good. It's better than everybody else's.
Easy
like,
A.
Yeah, I got this. And so I go and I'm digging through it and I'm looking for my stuff. And I pass like this one girl's thing and like she's got an A. And I'm like, and I set it aside, like super fucking arrogant, thinking that like I was awesome because like I could draw well.
Yeah.
And she got an A. And so I'm like, okay, I got this in the bag. Like if that's an A. And then I get to mine and it had a C on it. And I was like,
I love Lonnie.
What the hell? Like, this is bullshit. And I literally grabbed mine and I'm holding it up and I'm like, okay, maybe like not my greatest work. I don't think it's a C. Yeah. And then I grab hers and I'm holding it in the other hand. And I literally take hers over to his desk and I walk up there with these two papers in my hand, like ready to make a point, right?
Yeah.
And to tell him how I've been wronged. And I walk up there and I'm like, Mr. C. And he's like, hey, what's up, Jake? And I'm like, you gave me a C. He's like, yep, sure did. And I'm like, yeah, you gave her an A. I'm like, look at this. And he literally grabs them and he like pulls them in and he looks at him. He's like, yep, this is an A for her. This is a C for you. And he just like tosses them back at me. Yeah. I always thought about it on the scale where it was like, where do you rank compared to other people?
Right.
And then he changed it and he's like, even if you're good, like you could still do a bad job. And just because it's better than something someone else is doing doesn't mean that it's like, is it acceptable for you? It's crazy. Like talking about it, I get all emotional. Wish I wasn't such a.
You have big
pansy.
squishy feelings.
Such
It's
a pansy when it
fine.
comes to stuff like that.
No, I think
But it was
that's
huge.
good.
It was like
Yeah.
it was this really big moment in my life where like it did kind of change things, and I'm super grateful for it. Like I don't think I would have been able to do what I've done without that moment and without him holding me to that standard. And then I ended up applying for a scholarship at the Art Institute of Seattle, and I got a scholarship there. And so then it kind of like established the possibility that I could be an artist and made me believe that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And then while you were in Seattle going to school, you ended up having some rough times where you weren't applying yourself to your studies.
Yeah, I pretty much like partied and lost my scholarship. And so, yeah, when I was younger, I actually, in between my junior and senior year, I got caught with like a half pound of weed. And then I ended up in jail that summer. And then when I got out of jail, I ended up getting put on an ankle bracelet. So I had I was on house arrest. And so I had that little like leg bracelet. And then if I didn't come home at a certain time, this like air raid siren would go off and all the neighbors.
Like on your leg?
No, it was like from inside the house.
Oh my gosh.
Inside my parents' house, this like crazy alarm would go off. And then all the neighbors, it was so loud. It was in our house, but neighbors from around would come out and they would actually like come out onto their porches and be like, what the hell is that sound? Like I didn't. It happened when I was there. Like there was one time where I like went to go out to my truck. Oh yeah. And I like walked around, like I could go to this side of my truck, but then if I walked around my truck, it was too far. Like it was out of the proximity.
Oh, weird.
And so it would set off the thing. And then like, so the neighbors come out of their house and then the cops come like surprisingly fast. And then, so then we got like cops pulling up and there's a siren. The cops actually have to shut it off themselves. Like my parents can't shut off the siren.
And you can't like go back in and be like, I'm here.
Nah. And so up until that point in time, like I'd say like freshman and sophomore year, I ended up like freshman year, I probably got like B's and C's. And then sophomore year, it was kind of like C's and D's. And then junior year, it was like D's and F's. And then I got locked up and then I got out and then I was on the ankle bracelet. And so I didn't have anything to do except my schoolwork. And so my senior year, I got a 4.0.
Damn.
And then it was like easy. It was the first time I ever applied myself.
Yeah.
And so I got a 4.0, and then I ended up getting a scholarship to the Art Institute of Seattle. But then, yeah, when I went there, then I started partying and lost my scholarship again and came back and started doing construction for like 7 years.
Was that here in the Valley you did construction?
Yeah, so I built composting toilets.
They were really nice, by the way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's funny. Everyone's always like, sounds like a shitty job.
You're like, yeah, I've heard that a time or two.
Yeah, no, I've never heard that one. It was actually really cool, though, because we would build them here, and then we would install them in national parks all around the world.
Cool.
And so, like, I spent 2 years of my life in the bottom of the Grand Canyon building toilets. So, like, if you've ever hiked the Grand Canyon and you've gone on, like, the North Trail or the South Trail, like, I built those toilets.
Take a picture.
Those are real nice.
It's that's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah, nice flex right there.
Right? That's a weird flex, but solid.
There was kind of this crazy point in time where when I did get laid off of my construction job, I ended up coming back home, and then we moved into our camper trailer. And I remember asking Kelly, I'm like, so I could go get a job, I could do like odds and ends stuff, or like if I got a tattoo machine, like I feel like if I could figure out how to put the ink in the skin, like I could do amazing things. And I'm like, I'm on unemployment for like 4 months. And so I'd really like to try and tattoo. And she's like, get a tattoo machine. You got 4 months, better get good.
Better get good. I can see you saying
Well,
that
now
too.
it's so funny looking back and being like, wow, 4 months, that was ambitious.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
To try and like set everything up and be making enough money to support like a family of 6.
Right, because you're pregnant at the time too, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was like, man, I really want to do this, but there was this part of me that didn't know if I could. And then I read an article in Tattoo Artist magazine by Jeff Gogwe. And at the time, he was literally like
Solid guy.
just some dude in a magazine. And now he actually does our tattoos.
Yeah.
And I've met him, and he's an incredible person. But yeah, at that point in time, he just said that what he said, I would say, was also kind of like equally impactful and almost along the same lines of like what Mr. Collinsworth said to me when I was younger. And he said that he would watch some people tattoo. And he's like, when they tattooed, they would do it flippantly because they got really good.
Yeah.
Right? Like they got super fucking good at tattooing. And then when they would tattoo, because they were so good, they could go at it flippantly. So like if they went out partying the night before or something, like they wouldn't really put that much into it. And then they would compete in these contests with Jeff, and like they would still win sometimes.
Right.
Because and Jeff could do it too. Like he was good enough to where he could have flippantly done a tattoo and still won. But he's like, I would much rather see somebody that is not as good put absolutely everything that they have into what they're doing than to see somebody that is really, really good half-ass it and just kind of go through it flippantly and then turn out something that's like still going to be good, but it wasn't their best. He's like, I'd rather see somebody do their best. And I was on the fence like about doing it, and I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start tattooing, and like every line that I do, I'm gonna try and make it like the best that I possibly can. And every tattoo that I do, I'm going to try and make it the best that I possibly can. And I'm not gonna do things flippantly. And so that was like what made me start like actually doing it. And then I went super hard. Then I tattooed like crazy. Put on a headlamp, tattooed myself in my mom's basement, and worked
Got some
really hard.
great leg pieces.
Yeah,
You still have any of those?
They're really bad. Yeah,
He has all of them.
I have
Do
both.
you?
Well, actually, they're both kind of like half finished because I put in like 40 hours, and then I went in and I tried to get an apprenticeship, and I just got a job.
Oh, damn. They're like, man, you're actually pretty qualified. So,
Yeah.
But you don't start out doing portraits.
Yeah.
And that's what Jake started out doing on his legs was portraits. And they're like, you're kind of pulling this off, so we can't just let you walk out.
that's awesome. What portraits were you doing?
He did a portrait of Titus as Jesus.
Oh, I remember that one actually.
And then he did Asmodeus. Is that right?
Yeah, on the other leg, which you can't even tell what that one is because it's like color lined, and color lines don't hold up over time, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was
So it's got
definitely
like all
not
these faded ass
using,
color
like, a
lines. We'll have to take a couple
lining
pictures
pigment.
and
Yeah.
throw it up over the video feed so people can see how terrible.
how amazing they are.
That's crazy though that you went straight for portraits.
That's what I wanted to do. Well, it was like
Yeah.
at that point in time, like people were just starting. So that was like 13 years ago, and people were just starting to do really, really cool stuff on the skin.
Yeah.
And then all the old school tattoo artists are like, that shit's never gonna hold up. Like it's gonna fall apart over time. And some of it does.
Yeah.
But like if you use the tattoo fundamentals, then it actually will hold up really well. Where as long as you get good saturation and as long as you put pigment in between pigment to stabilize it, then it works really well.
How are you doing?
Spicy. I don't know why that spot's spicy. It's like not one that should, but
It's because we're going back over lines that are gray lines. Oh. And then we haven't done.
What about that
We're short on time. We don't have time for Vazican. We got to prove that Mariah.
Hear that,
is
Mariah?
I am tough.
Tough. She is a tough girl.
I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Maybe tomorrow.
If it doesn't challenge you, then it doesn't change you.
Okay.
Okay.
So when I first started getting tattooed by you, you were telling me about a list.
My integrity list.
Yeah, your My Name Is Earl list.
It was definitely a My Name is Earl list for sure. And so that ended up coming about because of, I feel like I should dive into that story really quick. So my son Robert, Carlitos' older brother, ended up getting in trouble because he was not doing his homework. And I got a call from his teacher. And they're like, Mr. Bertelsen, your son has not been doing his homework. And so this was the point in time when we were actually living in the camper trailer.
Okay.
And so I'm just starting to like learn how to tattoo and stuff. We're living in this camper trailer. And get a call from his teacher, says he hasn't been turning in his schoolwork. Well, I felt bad that they were living in a fucking camper, right?
Yeah.
And so like I would like get done with my stuff for the day. They'd come back from school. I'm like, you guys have any homework? And they're like, no. And I'm like, sweet, let's go do something fun. Because I felt bad that like we were in a camper, and so we'd take them and we'd go do something fun. Like we didn't have any money, so we'd like take them to the park, or we'd go on a hike somewhere, take the dogs for a walk. But we would do something with them every single day. And so I get this call from his teacher, and I'm like, what the hell? Because every day I'd be like, do you have homework? Every day he'd be like, nope, don't have any homework.
Well, and then you checked his backpack, and it was literally like bursting at the seams with papers.
It's like a fucking volcano. Like I unzip the top of it, and it's like stuff comes out of it, and I'm like, what the hell? And so I look at Kelly, and I'm like, baby, I'm gonna have to take him out, and I'm gonna have the talk with him. And she's like, what talk? I'm like, the honesty talk. And she's like, okay. Well, I didn't even know what that meant, right? Like, I just knew that I'm gonna have a talk with him. So I take him outside of our camper trailer, and we had this shitty little picnic table outside.
Yeah.
Like this wooden picnic table that was like terrible. And so I sit him down at the picnic table, and I'm like, well, we need to have a talk, buddy. And I look at him, and I'm like, I led the talk with like, I just decided I needed to say something really like impactful.
Yeah.
And so I look at him, and I'm like, all right, dude, in order to be a man in life, there's only two things that you have to do. I'm like, the first thing you have to do is you have to be honest. And the second thing that you have to do is you have to have the balls to do what's right. And like literally as soon as I say it, like all this shit that I did in my past that I'd like, you know, lied about, I'd gotten in high speed chases and like got away and gone in and filled out false police reports, and I'd fucking like got felony assaults and like knocked people's teeth out and filled out false police reports on those so I could get away with it and shit like that. And all this stuff comes rushing back into my head, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm being a hypocrite right now.
Your backpack exploded.
Yeah, and I'm like,
volcano.
I'm like, I am being a huge hypocrite. And I realized in that moment that if I kept being a hypocrite, that it wouldn't what I said wouldn't be impactful. And so like my dad, he would say things and then he wouldn't actually exemplify those things.
Right.
And so I didn't listen to him. I thought it was just a load of shit. He'd be like, don't hit women. And he'd like beat the crap out of my mom. And so like I didn't listen to what he said. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm doing the same thing. Right. And if I keep doing that, like these little kids are not going to listen to me. And I'm like, I have to go back and try and take care of that stuff. And so I went back inside and I talked to Kelly and she's like, how'd the talk go? And I was like, oh, it went great. And she's like, oh, that's good. And I'm like, yeah, you remember how I told you the story about like getting in high-speed police chases and like knocking that guy's teeth out? And she's yeah. And I'm like, well, I need to go turn myself in for those things. And you remember what you said?
I was like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
Actually, what she said was, the hell you do. We all have skeletons in our closet. She's like, you leave them there and you learn from them and then you move on. She's like, I'm fucking pregnant. You're not going to go turn yourself in for this shit and then like go to jail. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like if I'm going to be the father of these kids, like I have to do it with integrity. Otherwise they're not going to listen to me down the road. And I can kind of see your goosebumps.
They real.
And so I couldn't really argue with him. I'm like, okay, like obviously, and obviously I wasn't going to talk him out of it at that point either.
Yeah.
He had made up his mind about it.
So I basically gave her the ultimatum and I'm like, either you stand by me while I take care of these things or I can't be the father of your kids. Otherwise the kids aren't going to listen to me. And so then I did. I made a list.
I'm like, peace.
And it was like, she was crazy supportive. Like I actually got locked up in jail. There's a lot of stories. We'll get into some of those stories in future podcasts. But like, she stood by my side and it was amazing. She supported me going and turning myself in. I thought I was going to go to prison for some of the stuff. And like, she's like, well, I'll be here when you get out. She's just like this super amazing, supportive
She a real
person.
one.
And so, yeah, I actually did. I made a list of everything that I had done wrong. And then I went back through one by one and took care of all the things on my list that I had done. And it took 5 years to make it through the list, but I actually took care of all the ones that I could.
Yeah.
And so there were some that like I just couldn't take care of. Like I went in and tried to find like what had happened, and I'm like, oh yeah, 15 years ago I drove along and like shot out all these windows. Like, do you guys have any records of that? And they're like, no, we don't have records.
Like, that's
from
weird.
Like, there's no way we're gonna be able to get this. But they did help me take care of as many of the ones as I could, and so it was super impactful. And I feel like overall the kids do act with more integrity than most people do. And I think for the most part, the kids are the kind of people that would like go back and clean up their piss. Like,
We should ask
think, would you do it, Litos?
Would you go back and clean up your piss?
I've done it.
Been there, done that.
So yeah, it was, I think we should save those stories for like future podcasts, because there's a lot of them involved with like going back and trying to restore integrity in my life.
Totally.
But what I did get to see is like, I actually do believe in karma now.
Yeah.
Just because my life ended up getting so much better. It was like I would go take care of things. And I heard this, it was actually in a different Gay Henricks book called The 5 Wishes. But he talked about how life is supposed to flow like a river. And he's like, if it's supposed to be like relatively easy to do things, and it's supposed to be relatively easy to accomplish things in your life. But if you do things that are out of integrity, then it's like throwing a rock in your river. And all of a sudden, it's going to be harder to do things. And when you go to try to do something, there's going to be more problems that pop up along the way. And I was like, I read that book after I'd already taken a couple of like the biggest fucking boulders out of my river. And I was like, holy shit, life is going way better. By that point in time, like we'd moved out of the camper trailer and we're like in this amazing house that was on a lake, and we got into it, like crazy things happened to like be able to get into the house.
I love that house.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
We actually, like, the people didn't, they didn't make us actually fill out a lease or do anything. They just gave it to us because they liked us. And that sort of shit had never happened to me before. When I would go and try and get a house, it was like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And there was so many roadblocks and so many different things that ended up popping up and like getting in the way, and like it was crazy. And then when I tried to do it, it's like it just worked out amazingly well. And I was like, what? Yeah, maybe the whole river thing is real. And so yeah, I kept at it, and I ended up like taking care of all the stuff. But I think overall, yeah, that is a fairly character shaping thing. I don't think a lot of people have made a list of everything that they've done wrong.
Oh, for sure.
And then gone back and tried to take care of the things that they did that were wrong. And I also don't think most people were like as far out of integrity as I was either. Like I did a lot of messed up stuff, and then I went back and took care of a lot of it.
Totally. Well, it was like something that filtered through everything then too, like your process of parenting and how you just kind of continued through life.
Yeah, and I feel like for such a long time I had like a shitty impact on the world, right? Like my overall existence made the world worse off.
Yeah.
Like because I was here, the world sucked more. And so I took care of as much of the stuff as I could, but then I wasn't able to take care of a lot of it. And so then it kind of left this hunger to do more, and it left this hunger to be able to do the opposite, right? Like to have more of a positive impact on life, and to hopefully make it so like the sum of
your existence.
Yeah, like existence itself will make like my existence will be positive instead of negative overall on life. And so now that's like what we try to do. That's kind of like our life and the way that we try to live. So we definitely need to talk about EXEX, and we need to explain EXEX to people so they understand what it is.
Definitely. Sure. So EXEX means to exceed expectations. And so that's just kind of what we're trying to do with everything we do, whether it's tattooing or product development, or pretty much anything that we're doing. We're just trying to exceed expectations and do the best job that we can do with everything.
Everything.
I feel like it's a bar too for like the way that we try and do everything. Like I almost feel like when you're doing something, I feel like if you don't exceed expectations, then you're not really doing it right. Like that's totally one of my favorite things about both of you guys is when you go to do something, like you do it that way, always. Like if I'm like, hey, do this thing, like when you get done with it, I'm always like, whoa, that is way cooler than what I was hoping for. And I feel like that's the way most people should do things, but then it is almost rare now to have things that do exceed expectations. And so then like also, I think a key part of EXEX is we want it to be something that inspires people to do that.
And with that, we have a bunch of stuff that we're having worked on and like new products that we're creating.
Yes. I'm so excited about all that.
So Milen
Mad Taylor?
Yeah. He was on a podcast a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was on one of our proof of concept podcasts, and he is amazing. Like Milen is such a cool guy, and I would say he's the person that I would say is probably like more of a master at their craft than like anyone I know. Yeah, totally. Like he's been a tailor for 30 years, but then the stuff that he does is like so far above and beyond anything that you see clothing wise.
And he makes it look easy. You're so easy where you're like, I could do that. And then I'm like, actually, I can't do that. I have no idea.
Well, like one of the things that he was saying that I think is so crazy is he'll see a new machine and like it stitches differently and can do different materials. And he's like, I have to have it and I have to master it. Mm-hmm. And I think he was telling Jake like, oh yeah, you've seen my shop. You know how many machines I have that are all just for like different stitchings and like, different materials. And it's nuts.
Yeah.
So what kind of products are we going to be like having available soon?
So we're starting off with our t-shirts.
Right.
And so XX is sponsoring our podcast, which is super awesome.
Yes.
And so we're going to be doing a bunch of cool like pre-sale stuff. I guess that's kind of like the separate part when we do the Ink and Icons intro stuff. But we're starting off with t-shirts, and then we're moving into sweatshirts. We already have really, really awesome leggings too.
Yeah.
That are amazing booty shaping leggings.
They're so
that
good.
Kelly is actually wearing.
Yeah, but they're not labeled properly.
Oh, those are
prototype ones.
Yeah, those are the prototype ones.
Yeah, they are.
Ooh, can you get a close up there,
nice.
Carlitos?
I love these leggings.
Yeah, they're so cute. They're definitely one of my favorite, I'd say. I like how the band hits too.
Me too.
Yeah, no, those leggings are so rad.
They really are.
It's funny too because she's pretty much thrown away all of her other leggings. She has
Really?
no other leggings. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes. So we have these new XX shirts.
Yes.
We're going to have ones that are specifically for women.
Oh my God, so excited about that.
Yes. Can you tell us what they look like? I haven't seen them, and I don't know
Totally.
anything.
So they're really cool because they fit a pretty wide range of body types. I got to go to LA with a couple of my girlfriends, and we have very different body types, and they fit us all super great. Just like the inspo
Yeah, totally.
clothing for them. And they're redesigned, and they have this really cool seam that goes from the back shoulder blades down to the middle,
Yeah.
so that you have more room for printing capabilities
Oh,
on the sides.
cool.
Yeah, which is super flattering, and
Yeah.
it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so the shirts are amazing. Like, they're so comfortable, they're so nice to wear, and so we're really excited to be able to release them just because we've been working on those for so long. And we're actually going to be doing all the Ink and Icons artist shirts on these t-shirt blanks, and so they're going to have print on top of it. So the shirts that we're delivering should definitely exceed expectations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
For sure. And it's going to be a super cool process where we have our guests on and design a tattoo that's specific for them. And then the tattoo is going to be on a shirt. That
And
will be-
stickers.
Yeah, and stickers.
Yes.
Do love the stickers.
So this design is actually going to be on one of our first shirts, and it is a death moth, and it was specifically designed for you and kind of tells some of your story just because of the stuff that you've been through and like the idea of going through metamorphosis because of things happening, and then the idea that you talked about too of, you know, turning it into a good thing and how you actually suffer less if you end up giving up suffering. And
Yeah.
so the story behind it is just amazing. It's a super, super cool story behind the art, and I really feel like it's going to make an amazing first shirt.
Yeah, I agree.
Ink and Icons shirts.
Well, and what's super cool is there's limited runs made for each shirt that go up for sale, and subscribers get discounts and first access to the shirts that we make. So that's a cool perk.
And she's talking about our Exex Alliance app, which is
yes.
definitely something that we haven't touched on, but we should totally tell people about. And it's basically like our app that we've developed for the community, for the XX community and for the Ink and Icons community. And then there's super cool things that go along with the different tiers of the app too.
But the tiers that we have, the first one is the XX Ally tier. And that one has bonus Ink and Icons podcast content like we were talking about. We'll have access to our Q&As that we're going to try to do weekly. And then you guys have access to the Q&As at the end of the Ink and Icons podcast while we're shooting live with the guests. So you can ask questions and that are
That's
like
super cool.
specific to the guests.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
I hope there's weird questions.
I hope so too. Fingers crossed.
Some of the
Yes.
weird questions are some of the best questions. Like Carlitos' bear question was
Yeah.
so good. So yeah, I hope people in the audience ask us some weird ass questions too. That would make me so happy.
Yeah, the weirder the better.
I mean, within reason.
Hopefully there's some good ones too, but like
Carlitos asks me like a weird question every other day. I feel like, what would you rather, not have a nose or not have ears?
that's a tough one.
I know.
Actually, I don't think it was tough.
I would get rid of my nose.
What?
I love music.
Fuck yeah.
I love music so
Yes,
much.
suck.
I couldn't not hear music.
No, but I was
most
thinking just the
smells
aesthetic.
Are horrible.
I was thinking
aesthetic.
just
You
the
look like
aesthetic.
damn Voldemort.
Yeah,
Like
they
you
were-
still had
they were
like,
like, oh,
the
no.
function of your ears. You could still hear. You just
I
had like.
love how you would go deaf just so you could still be beautiful.
No, I totally agree with her.
I love that about you. You're super hot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're super hot.
And then I would be able to sleep better. Like no more earplugs.
That's true.
I'm like snore away, baby,
We need
snore
to
away.
Photoshop a version of Kelly without her ears.
Yeah, and a
just so
version of
you
you
can see
without
be
your
like
nose.
me without my nose.
I said
Food
the
would
same
not
thing,
taste
though,
the
by
same.
way.
You what?
You said the same thing.
Yeah, he did
Yeah.
say the same thing.
All right.
But I was still picturing the function, by the way.
Yeah, and I picture like Voldemort. Like I don't want to look like that. I don't
No.
look like a little evil
No nose,
wizard man. No
white
thanks.
dude.
I just
Yeah.
love hearing.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Our next tier is the Luminary. So in the Luminary subscription, you get everything from the Ally tier. And then you also get pre-sale for the Ink and Icons guest t-shirts like we were talking about. So you get email notifications.
And they actually get to buy them before anybody else.
Yeah.
So if
So
you
go
do
live
sign up
first.
to be part of the app and you end up being a luminary, like you get to buy the shirts before anybody else. And a lot of them are really limited runs. So
Totally.
they can sell out actually in that pre-sale where maybe nobody else will actually get them.
Right. And then they'll also get access to XX pre-sale clothing drops. So all the new stuff.
And so,
Oh, like when the sweaters come out.
Yeah.
the hoodies.
Hoodies, I can't wait.
Everybody needs a hoodie.
And I can't wait for the
Hoodies, they're so awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. The
and
fit
and the
looks so cool.
women's t-shirts and actually
Yeah.
like show them off and
Totally.
show what they look like.
Totally. And then in that tier, you also get a quarterly custom sticker pack mailed to you.
Who doesn't love stickers?
I love
All the
stickers.
stickers. And I
really
feel
love
like knowing us, we'll have more than we say we're going to have because we all love stickers.
Because we got to exceed expectations.
Yeah,
For sure.
For sure. That's it.
That's why.
It's not the weird like sticker obsession.
If
No.
you sign up for any of it, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. And if you
No,
are,
truly.
like, I have failed.
I have failed. So our next tier is the XX VIP. And that one has everything from the first two tiers. And then a custom code each month that gets you a free article of clothing that's valued at $55 or less. And that includes items that are on sale also.
Nice.
So you could actually get one of the artist shirts when they come out
Yeah, when they're on
as
sale.
part of your subscription.
Totally. You could get an artist shirt every time.
Or a pair of leggings.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
leggings are nice.
But to look as easy as Achilles
Yeah,
does.
if you don't want a mono booty.
And the t-shirts are so amazing. Like they're my favorite for just lounging around in.
Yeah.
They're so comfortable. Like
Yeah,
now-
well, that's like the coolest part is you can dress them down and dress them up so easy.
yeah,
And they're so soft.
they're ridiculously soft.
Yeah, I love them. I actually like want one in like a really big size just to be comfy and like maybe tie in a knot, and then like a smaller size to be cute, more dressed up.
I like it.
Yeah, so you should probably just get a
Options.
bunch.
You should. You definitely should.
Yeah,
So the
because like
other-
I'm a small t-shirt,
Yeah.
but then Jake's a large, and I'll jack his stuff all the
Totally.
time and wear
Yeah,
'em.
that's genius.
Yeah.
She totally does, too. I'm like, you have like 3 of these in your size, but then she still steals mine.
But how many do you have?
How many do you have?
I think I have just 2 now.
What?
Actually, of the new, well, because the new ones, they're such like limited. Like I didn't even
yeah.
get very many of them. Like I think this run we only did 80 of the test ones, and so this first batch is like super limited, which I'm excited to see down the road. Like
Totally.
because these ones will hopefully become very collectible.
Yeah.
down
The
road.
OG, triple OG.
And then,
Yeah.
and then the second, like we've already made modifications and changes to the next ones that we're having produced right now,
Totally.
just to make it so they keep getting better and better.
For sure.
All right, so Kelly,
Yes.
who do you want to have come on the Ink and Icons podcast?
I would love it if Post Malone would come on the Ink and Icons podcast.
That would be pretty badass.
It would be epic.
What would
And
what would you ask Posty? What's your biggest question for Posty?
can I tattoo your face?
Ooh,
Just going straight
Please.
for it.
that's a good.
It's a big
Posty's
it's a big
face.
ask, but I feel like I'm highly qualified and we'd have a great time.
I like that. I like that.
It would be the best fucking face tattoo he has too, by
Whoa,
far.
I mean,
Don't throw
feel like
shade.
insult
Don't
the
throw
man.
shade.
yeah, no shade being thrown.
I'm just saying you're
We
really
could,
good. Like
That's true. You are really good.
you are kind of like in a different tier of tattoo artists.
We could
in
have
general.
a solo cup stacking contest. I'm pretty sure that I can get quite a few solo cups stacked on the top of my head. Baby,
Yeah.
who would you like to call out to be on the Ink and Icons podcast?
I am totally calling out Steve-O to come on the Ink and Icons podcast. We even have some of his hot sauce over there. The hot sauce for your butthole. See, like what other podcast has fucking... What other podcast does tattoos and also has hot sauce for your butthole on there? Like we're kind of like the unofficial sponsors of hot sauce for your butthole.
I think
And so I feel like he should come on here.
I think I know what podcast does that though.
What?
His podcast.
We are the only other podcast that
Other
has
than
it.
him. Yeah, you're right.
No, he's just a super cool dude. Like he actually has gone through so many things and he has a really cool outlook on life. I feel like his storyline is kind of similar where like he had a bunch of rough times.
Yeah.
And then he made it through it and he's actually a really inspiring guy.
Yeah,
And so
I
I would
agree.
love to have him on the podcast. I'd love to talk about, you know, what changes ended up happening in his life and what advice he has for other people. I
Totally.
think it would be amazing overall for like everybody to be able to hear that.
No, totally, I agree.
No, Steve-O calling you out to come on the Ink and Icons podcast. And you could either get tattooed or you could give me a tattoo on the podcast too.
You guys could chug hot sauce together.
We can fucking pour hot sauce on the tattoos when they're done.
Ooh, that sounds spicy.
That sounds real spicy.
It sounds fucking horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, that too.
yeah. But an experience nonetheless. So,
Yeah, totally.
Bonding.
right?
All right, so this is the tattoo all finished and done. Mariah sat like a champ getting her
Yeah.
death moth
Good
tattooed
job,
on
girl.
her. You did amazing. Good job.
Thanks. You did
And
amazing.
Thank
Both
all
of
of
you.
you guys for watching the Ink and Icons podcast. We really appreciate you. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much
Bye.
for watching, and we appreciate all of you a ton. Thanks.
See ya.